So I wrote a Substack article about why Trump's next 4 years are crucial to the future of the GOP. The 2028 presidential election will be a referendum on the Trump administration. The GOP nominee, whether it be J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Trump will have a huge impact on the GOP. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things political news and election analysis that isn't beholden to any mainstream media source. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this, and follow me on X down below in the description, and also subscribe to my Substack because I will be writing a lot more articles on here as of right now. Make sure to like the article when you do subscribe. So looking at this article that I wrote, I said the president-elect has enjoyed a popular vote win the first time he's even done it in the 3 elections he's been in. He won 49.8% of the national popular vote, very close to a majority of voters. Kamala won 48.3% of the national popular vote, being the weakest performance for a Democrat nominee in the national popular vote since Hillary Clinton in 2016. She also suffered the biggest loss a Democrat has since 1988, only gathering 226 electoral votes, while Trump got 312 electoral college votes, the most electoral votes a Republican has gotten since 1988. This victory was due to a huge shift in Hispanic voters, a minor shift amongst Black and Asian voters, alongside a slight loss of white voters, according to Wikipedia. The president didn't win a traditional landslide according to historical standards, but winning 312 electoral college votes is a comfortable win considering the electorate is less white than it was 20-30 years ago. The president has gone through 2 assassination attempts, multiple felony counts and trials, as well as 8 years of a political smear campaign against him. This, alongside getting plus 77 million votes, gives him a modern mandate to go through on his campaign promises. Here are some of the important demographics compared from 2020 to 2024. So you can see here that Donald Trump in this election actually did better with whites than in 2024, according to the Wikipedia demographics page, which is really interesting. You saw he won this category by about 17. I think now he won them by about like 15 or 16 points. I think it's about 15 here. You see it. So he did 2 points worse with the white vote, but you see the Hispanic vote here. He lost at 65 to 33% in the last election. Now he only lost the group by 5 points. And you can see here they're less of the electorate. You saw a little bit less minority groups kind of turn out in that election. That's why Trump was able to do huge margins in the state of Texas, Florida, and actually win back states like Georgia and Arizona, because you had less Hispanic people turn out than in previous cycles. And we see over here in the Substack that right now you see Native American / American Indian was a complete reverse from the last election, which is fascinating. Literally like the reverse margin from 2020. Other voters were much more competitive this time around. Trump actually won that group outright, which is extremely fascinating. And his share of the Black vote went up from 12% to 13%. So he made minor gains with that demographic. And you see here, he won Hispanic men outright, which is the first time a GOP candidate has done that in a very, very long time. He got over 20% of Black men and actually outright won white women as well. Very, very interesting demographic there. And you see here that he actually won Catholics by 20 points. In the last election, you actually saw that President Biden, in fact, won the Catholic vote by 5%, which is a huge difference from 2020. And that's why Trump was able to do so much better in Michigan, Pennsylvania. He did way better in New York. There's a lot of Catholics up here, including in other states in the Northeast, and even to an extent Illinois and Virginia as well. So that's also something to really pay attention to. But I continue to state in the article, in 2024, much more Republicans turned out than Democrats. Trump gained 2 points with Black voters and astounding 23 points with Hispanic voters, solidifying states like North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, and Florida in the Republican territory. States like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia were somewhat close, but Trump still picked off these states. This was due to a messaging against illegal immigration, inflation, bringing back jobs to America, and being a common sense candidate, as he's described himself. This appealed much more to voters voters than the Harris-Walz campaign, which focused a lot more on appealing to voters who favored abortion, climate change, and other issues. Harris did try to steer the economic argument against Trump, but failed due to Biden's poor record and approval rating, as well as the fact that she said on The View, "I couldn't think of a single thing I'd do different," when being asked if she'd do anything different from President Biden. Trump has built an America First coalition that has shocked many political pundits, not me, and can bring the GOP to victory in many years to come. However, this hinges on his performance in office. My take is that he needs to go through as much campaign promises and government change as humanly possible. DOGE, mass deportations, and economic growth will be the three biggest factors in determining his performance in office. If the economy improves, if DOGE effectively and impartially cuts government spending, and Trump goes through with immigration policies and a mass deportation plan, the electorate will reward his presidency. However, the catch is they will only reward the candidate that receives his endorsement, which will most likely be J.D. Vance, his vice presidential pick, and the senator from Ohio. Never in the history of the United States has the exact same electoral map occurred twice, which is both good and bad news for J.D. Vance or any future GOP candidate. For the sake of argument, I will choose J.D. Vance to be the nominee since he's leading in most primary polls and will be the favorite to be endorsed by Trump as of right now. If the Trump administration is popular, the GOP nominee will most likely outperform Donald Trump and will more than likely get 319 to 219 in the Electoral College, picking off Maine, New Hampshire, or both due to anti-war and economic promises that would be fulfilled in the Trump administration. If the Trump administration is not popular, the GOP will underperform Donald Trump and more than likely lose the 2028 election, even if the nominee is Kamala Harris once again, who speculates to possibly throw her hat in the ring for a 2028 presidential bid. An expanded battleground map would look something like this. So this is kind of like an expanded battleground map for the next election. So if either side does well, these are kind of the states that I would say would be open to either candidate of winning. I think Virginia is out of reach for Republicans even in 2028. The state has those DC suburbs that keep growing and growing and growing, and I think it's going to be increasingly harder even for somebody like Vance in a Trump favorable environment to actually pick off that state. But I think that New York and Illinois would actually be closer than a place like Virginia as of right now. Yes, even New York and Illinois are in the toss-up category for the expanded battleground map. Doesn't mean the GOP will win them, but someone like J.D. Vance would run it up in the rural areas, and Trump goes through his mass deportation plans. Big city areas like New York City and Chicago will massively reward the GOP for that platform. At this point, Trump has shored up the GOP, the states of Florida, Texas, Iowa, and Ohio, albeit they may be closer in a referendum election that punishes the Trump administration. Trump must go through with as much campaign promises as possible that will make or break the GOP in the 2028 presidential election. The promises of mass deportation, economic rebound, and common sense against massive government spending and the LGBTQ policies/culture will shape the GOP in the future, and voters will either reward or punish them for their efforts. Long time to go, but we will see if this holds up. The midterms are also a huge factor in the Substack and could change the course of the electorate depending on the results. Topics stated in this article can apply to midterms as well. And so if we look at the electoral map, I have two scenarios for what an electoral map in 2020 would look like for a weak Republican, meaning that the Trump administration is unpopular, or a strong Republican, meaning that the Trump administration is popular. So if it is a weaker Republican going into 2020, I honestly think that Iowa, Ohio, and Florida would be out of reach for a Democrat, even in a very unfavorable Republican environment. A state like Texas would more than likely be very competitive. I actually think it would be under 5, and this is because Latinos in a referendum environment against Trump would actually kind of revolt against the former president, and you're kind of against the former president and as well against, the GOP nominee, and you'd also have a lot of voters who wouldn't turn out for the GOP as well. That's the big thing. It's not that he would have all of these voters flip. Some may flip back to being Democrat if his administration is disappointing, but it's a lot of voters that just won't turn out, period. And more than likely Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada would actually be in the lean column. I even think that a state like Utah could be under 10 points in a referendum election alongside Kansas. North Carolina would be the only state that could really go either way. I actually think, going based off the results that we got and the fact that, a weak Republican going into 2028 against an unpopular Trump administration without Trump on the ballot, I actually think could lose the state of North Carolina. However, on the other hand, if somebody like J.D. Vance, and this could also happen to J.D. Vance, by the way, if Trump's administration is not popular, just FYI, maybe he wouldn't lose North Carolina. I think that if Vance would be the nominee in this kind of environment, I think the Republicans would hold on to a North Carolina and maybe even like a Nevada, because J.D. is just that palatable to the electorate. But I still think they'd suffer a pretty big loss either way. Now, if J.D. Vance is the candidate or there's a strong Republican candidate, I almost think that if Trump's administration is rewarded by the electorate, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada would be shored up in the likely Republican column. Maybe the Rust Belt states would be a little bit more competitive, but this is assuming a 5-point win in the popular vote. This is also like a 5-point win in the popular vote for a Democrat, just by the way, just kind of saying that right now. And so we see here that all of these states would effectively be toss-up states, the same way that these lean and tilt states were kind of in the toss-up category. You have it here. I think in a referendum environment, maybe Minnesota would be like a 1 to 2 point win for the Democrat. I think New Mexico would actually flip. You have a lot of oil industry in the state of New Mexico. A Trump administration that's popular and kind of focuses on economic rebound and mass deportations, I think would really move the state of New Mexico to the right. Trump only lost it by like about 60 to 70,000 votes, and it only voted for Harris by 6 points. So, to say it would flip in a favorable environment isn't a stretch at all. I think Virginia would be in the lean Democrat column in this as of right now. I actually think that New Jersey would probably flip Republican, and maybe New Hampshire would end up going into that Republican column, but maybe Nebraska second and Maine may end up staying with the Democrat. Maybe if it's somebody like Vance, maybe they can win Maine at large. Maybe they don't pick off New Hampshire or a New Jersey. It's possible that they don't, but I do think they'd pick up a couple of these states. More than likely, the Republican would win Hispanics nationwide. So like New York and Illinois would basically go within single digits. New York would be like a 7-point win. Illinois like 6 points. JD would do very well in Appalachia. Colorado just like an 8-point victory for the Democrat. Oregon like 7 points. So it would be a very favorable Republican environment. But the point is, guys, is that what happens these 4 years is going to be extremely important. And what's really interesting is that I actually think that if Trump's administration is popular, the Republican will do better than Trump. If it's not popular, they will more than likely lose or barely hold on, but more than likely they would probably just lose the election altogether. And so if you guys did enjoy this analysis of the 2020 election, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe. If you want more content just like this, make sure to follow me on X and subscribe to my Substack in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon.